Hello, I'm Jessie,
And I'm Natalie.
and we are brand strategists, business owners, and we happen to be real life twins, as you can probably see. And we're here to help CEOs, founders, and leaders figure out what to do next to help their business grow. So this is our new channel. This is what we're trying to do. And today we're going to go straight off the deep end with a big, fat, hairy subject, which is what is stopping your business from growing? It's a biggie. There could be multiple reasons here, obviously, but we're going to start with 3 reasons, or we're going to talk about 3 reasons today that are most definitely within your control about why your business might not be growing. So let's go. I mean, before we get into it, Nets, what's those kind of, classic default strategies that you see founders or leaders doing to sort of cope if the business isn't growing?
Yeah, I think one of the classics that I see, I call it thingifying.
Nice
So
word.
thingifying, yeah, it's a good word. And it's when you point to anything outside of you as being the problem. So typically, if you're a team, especially, they'll start pointing to the leadership. So you might get blamed, or it might be the economy or the culture at the work. So when we're under duress, it's a lot easier to point to they and say that they are the problem rather than say that we might be the problem, or if we're only part of the problem, maybe admitting that we have more agency than we would like to think to address that problem. So that's definitely one thing that I see. Another big thing that I think leaders will see their teams doing and will find it very frustrating is going to task. So when the big stuff feels like it's too big, teams tend to get all of the little things done, or they're trying to do. I mean, we know it's busy work. You're never going to have all of that work done. And what happens then is you end up with a team that, although absolutely stretched to the nines, are not really being as productive as the business needs them to be. And you can end up with a reputation for being reactive rather than leading. And I think it's particularly a problem for brand and marketing, because if you happen to be an organization where brand and marketing are seen at the end of the funnel, and you end up with lots of busy work trying to respond and react to what the business wants from you, you're on a sort of hamster wheel, and you're on a hiding to nothing, really.
Yeah, no, I can totally relate to that. Reminds me of my team in America, bless them. They were always on. They ran every deadline. It used to drive me nuts. Busy fine work is definitely not something that's very productive. So let's have a think about 3 things that we can do instead, or founders can, CEOs and leaders can do instead. I love Brené Brown. I just adore Brené Brown. And she talks about a principle. It might have been in Lead Today, it might have been on a podcast, but she talks about sort of getting up on the balcony instead of being down on the dance floor or in the weeds. And it's not that you're going to leap to the balcony, but you've somehow got to remove yourself. And I mean, I think we've seen this so much, that kind of strategic drift. You've got the founder or the leader just in the thick of it, in the weeds, firefighting, basically doing, not leading. And it's so hard because they're not given that kind of time or space to think. They're not being able to carve it out for themselves. So that whole day is just basically reacting. It's just react, and it's never act. And obviously as a leader, that's deathly. I mean, you've got to make that space where you can actually sort of take yourself away, get back on that balcony and then figure out what the hell is going on and give your team some direction.
Absolutely. And I think we've got to, acknowledge it's emotionally really, really draining too, to be in the weeds, when you're constantly firefighting like that, and you really want to get to a decision or have your team act on what you think is important, but like you said, you just end up mired in the BAU.
Absolutely. I mean, when your day consists of running with a sandwich because that's your lunch, you're definitely not being given any space to think about anything at all.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, I mean, that takes us up to a really sort of nice, big, chunky second point, which is around not making decisions. Now, I love Roger Martin's idea of unmade choices, because I think that's what they actually end up being. Those unmade choices just stack up, because at some point you've got to make a choice and you've got to make a decision. And I think, when decisions aren't being taken, you are just stuck down in those weeds.
Absolutely. I mean, my favourite saying, strategy is choices. I'm always saying it, but it is choices. You've got to decide on something and leave the other possibilities behind.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And I do feel it because, for leaders, taking a choice, it's hard. I think anybody who's ever worked in a corporate environment knows that it can be a little bit toxic. Someone who takes a choice is in essence going out on a bit of a limb. It can be safer or easier for people to feel like they're, just going to go with whatever is reacting to that day. Because it can get really tough. But I think also for founders, you might not have anybody to talk to and able to take a decision. And certainly I know for No Planet B, so for those who don't know, I am a founder of a brand in the mass market called No Planet B, which is an eco beauty brand. So straight in at the big, bad mass market, which is a tough environment to be in. And we've had to take decisions that basically, had huge repercussions. I mean, when you're in the mass market, you're not talking a couple of thousand bottles that you're going to produce. You've got to actually think through a strategy that's going to be effective for a couple of hundred thousands of bottles. And there have been times where we've had to bet on the brand that could have potentially been a disaster, but we had to make a choice. If we hadn't made a choice, my brand would not be in the market today. 6 years later on, it would be a dead duck, whether that was positioning, whether it was around design changes, whatever changes, or decisions we had to make. We had to make those decisions to stay in the market. But I think the other thing that we've, I think you and I are very conscious of is when people have a specific target related to a bonus. I mean, we could probably do a whole episode on why I hate bonuses.
Yeah, and the thing we were chasing was not the thing that I thought we were chasing. We were chasing a bonus.
Well, also the thing is that, the thing that we're chasing isn't irrelevant anymore, but I'm going to chase it because my bonus is tied to it. So, yeah, I mean, people defending their space until the end, not making the right decision in that case then, because basically they've got a completely different intrinsic motivation that they're going to go for. And I've read somewhere, it was a while ago, but I think it's still very, very relevant today, that we're in a sort of a real epidemic of lack of decision making. I mean, you're a master NLPer, you've been with lots of teams, I know you're a master coach. I mean, what's your take on that one?
My take, well, I think the first thing I want to talk about is the cost of ambiguity, because it uses more energy. The brain requires more energy to operate in an ambiguous environment than it does to operate in clarity. So it does physically tire us out when we're not sure what's happening, or if the brain doesn't really understand how it needs to respond in any given moment. And when we think about that in today's workplace, no wonder we're all knackered, because there's constant ambiguity. So I think we've got to talk about that. And then, as you said earlier, making a decision. If it's something original, especially if it's going to push you forward, you're probably going out on a limb. It may be uncharted waters for your company or your brand, and that can feel scary. So although making a decision would actually bring clarity and ease the mind, so address that ambiguity issue, that decision making can feel hard in itself, because there's a scary leap that you've got to make. I think those two things can really cause a problem. We talk about decision fatigue, but actually I think it's ambiguity fatigue that we have.
It must be the old kind of open loop. I mean, Netflix does it so well.
Yeah.
When you say something like, I've got to go to the next one.
Exactly, your brain's working away on it, and it might not be working away on the right problem, and that is absolutely it. The ambiguity leap. If you leave it to your teams as to what you want their brains to be paying attention to, rather than directing them, who knows where that is going, and it's tiring. And then the other thing that I see a lot now, especially now, is when you feel like things are unclear for you and you're not growing, data can feel like a real comfort. Well, if we can just get the data, that's going to solve everything for us. And yet, how many times have you experienced that data, instead of coming to the rescue, is just another delayer? So that data lag, the data's never ready at the right time when you need it, or, the other department hasn't filled in the spreadsheet yet that you need, or you're not quite sure the agency's interpreted your data correctly. But whatever it is, it can lead to a sense of helplessness instead of being helpful. And one thing I want to say, more now than ever, because we can tap into lots of data, and AI is opening up everybody else's data to us, I think as a leader, go with your gut as much as the data. You know, I have only really ever worked with smart, experienced people. And I know intuition is a bit unfashionable right now, but I think it's powerful. And go with that first. Use the data to validate afterwards. You know,
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Or data to inform. I mean, you know, we're not going to be anti-data, but data will never tell you what's going to happen next. I mean, data can only tell you what happened in the past. That's valuable. Like you said, trusting your gut, trusting your intuition, doing something creative. It's about that choice again. You've got to make a choice ultimately.
Yeah, I want more gut marketers, really. I want more.
Yay! More.
I just want to see more of it. And, you know, AI will never be that. So let's just do more people stuff and say, this is what I think we should be doing.
No, I agree. And actually, just before we came on, I was reading about strategy versus planning. Because obviously there's a plan and a strategy, but strategy is not planning. I do like that because that's very much around sitting comfortably in the data and planning it out. But it's not going to actually facilitate the actual decision. It's like, no, you're still just buffering before actually deciding to do something. And as we know, taking a choice means not choosing something else. I mean, that's why it gets so tough, right? Because people want to kind of not really take that choice.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that can lead us actually to a third and final point, which is whether you're actually still relevant in your market. Because I think some people sort of sit in that comfort zone. You know, they think their product's the bee's knees, like, you know, the competition is rubbish. And what they haven't realised is that the market's moved on or the consumers moved on and they're just sitting in that assumption that they're still relevant. I mean, you know, you and I could probably think of like examples off the top of our head. You got an example of a market that completely missed it.
I do. It was
Asleep at the wheel.
Present. It was my. I asked for a Suri toothbrush. So sorry, Suri, and this is after years of being brand loyal to my Oral-B electric toothbrush. But honestly, if there's a now example of a, you know, a sector asleep at the wheel, you know, the big guys, they absolutely dominated, you know, they had the, you know, dentistry industry sewn up. But now I'm looking at my old toothbrush as a sort of lump of future landfill, you know, with a really mucky bum that always gave me the
oh, why is it always so filthy under there? That's disgusting.
Go to, like, you know, stay overnight for some facilitation work. And, you know, and I've got a cupboard full of plastic accessories from the various years that I've purchased a new one of those that I don't even know what they do. You know, they're just sat there in my cupboard, and they do somewhat smack of the kind of innovation that's created by teams. I'm going to be a bit critical, that spend far too much time in their world and not enough in the customer, because along comes Suri, who are delivering on what customers actually want: a longer battery life, sustainable, looks nice in the bathroom. It's still pricey, but we can't have everything.
Yeah, frankly, I just want one that doesn't fall off. It's when you've got 3 or 4 of those on your sink. I can tell you, it's like blinking dominoes every day. It's like, oh, there goes the toothbrushes. Yes, funny story. I actually made the guy who came up with the spinning toothbrush. Yes, he then went on to try and make everything spin, which was really no longer relevant. But I'm sure,
maybe,
yeah. Well, I'm sure he made his absolute billions on those toothbrushes. But yeah, odd guy. Yeah, I mean, I've got an example. Acne. So Clearasil. I don't think Clearasil has actually changed since you and I were teens. I think
it's the same little, you know, slightly shameful product that you used if you happen to have spots.
And honestly, I mean, like, to say that they were asleep at the wheel, I mean, you know, Starface, I just love them. I mean, to say they were brave, it was a brave strategy to go completely the opposite direction, but they were like, sod it, you know, you guys are about the shame and the clinical proof and whatever. We're just going to have some fun, because guess what? Everybody has spots. And I mean, when I commute to the office, when I come to the office, I see particularly young adults, actually, not so much teens, but young adults with little black stars on their face. I'm like, okay, it's a pimple. I love it. And I'm like, it's fun, you know, Clearasil, wake up. People don't have that shame and stigma anymore. Plus, you don't have to come at me with like nuclear level chemicals, you know, it's just a spot. it's gonna go away again. So, I love that. And I also, I do find it actually quite astonishing given who's behind brands like Clearasil, the size of the businesses behind them, the Proctors and the Johnsons, they had a lot of time and cash to figure this out, but it was small indie brands that actually introduced this market into the mass market. So your Hero Patches and Starface and all those guys, I mean, they absolutely wiped the floor.
Yeah, asked a better question when they came up. They said, how do we make this not something that you need to hide? Or they said, what would the opposite be of hiding? And, such powerful questions. And they've come up with something that,
really relevant.
And has really turned the category on the head. I agree.
Turn the category on the head, completely new segment within it. I think different audience, extending that beyond the sort of shameful teens. I mean, amazing. So yeah, what's our main points here that we're going to cover the ground?
Yeah, I think, well, on this last one, you've just got to keep looking out there, just when you're busy and your head's in all the stuff, keep looking out at the market, because I think also look beyond your traditional competition as well.
Amen to that
not
one.
Really competing against,
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing a bit of work in the pub sector lately, and pubs are not competing against pubs anymore. Pubs are competing against Netflix. Yes, something to do with some kind of entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to go beyond. I think you've also got to look at sort of global trends that you do need to pay attention to them. They may or may not apply, but if you're looking at an attitudes and behaviour level, is there a bit of an in there for you that might be coming your way towards your brand? Or, we know that most people will make a change as a result of feeling some kind of discomfort or dissatisfaction. So what's peeing people off right now?
Mm-hmm.
What are they fed up with that they want to change? So just get out there and have a look. And I think then you can decide, what does it mean for my brand, and how we're positioned, or in other words, just how are we showing up in customers' lives?
Totally.
In customers' lives.
Yeah, totally. I mean, again, I can relate so much with No Planet B. I mean, we've been in market for 6 years. In those 6 years, I mean, we founded the brand 2017, we're now in 2026. They were seismic in terms of having a sort of green, purpose-led brand. I mean, the world has completely changed. The customer has changed. Inherently underneath, people still care. Nobody wants to obviously blow up the planet or be sort of like the bad guy that's done the bad thing. People have other priorities, and we had to recognize that. If we had stuck to sort of our guns, we're natural organic certified and we're this and we're that, and look, we had to flex more than once, and we had to recognize that people have got other things on their minds. And whilst people do want to feel that they're part of something good, and that's basically our in, when they're standing in front of that shelf, their one thing is, does it smell nice? Am I going to have a nice experience with this? And that's what we had to lead on with the brand, and not sort of come at it going, we're so worthy, we're so certified, all these things. They get to that point, and then it's a win-win, because it's kind of like, well, you've appeased my sort of guilt and I've had a nice time at the same time. But, that demands a lot of flexibility. It demands a lot of choices being made, and it demands keeping up with the market and keeping up with the customer, and actually knowing where they are. And like you said, what's on their minds now versus what might have been on their minds even just a year ago or a couple of years ago.
Absolutely. Knowing your that strength, that strength and flexibility. So you're true to your core values, and you're true to what your brand is.
Yes.
But you've got to communicate a different message. You've got to pivot.
Absolutely. I love that. I mean, like, core values, they are so important. We certainly knew we're as a brand. It's kind of like, I'm still the same person whether I'm wearing a pink jacket or a blue jacket. That can change, but I've got to know who I am. But I might need to flex it, I might not be in with it anymore if I'm not keeping up and not keeping my brand flexible and paying attention, like you said, beyond that sort of very narrow market place of expertise that we all feel quite comfortable. So shall we wrap up? What's those 3 headlines that we just covered?
Headline number 1, can feel the most impossible, but as a leader, make some space for yourself to think. Change your diary, block out some time. I was listening to something really interesting earlier about we can concentrate on average, apparently, as human beings, for about 3 to 4 hours a day. Yes. I'm not saying you can carve out that amount of time in your day. But you can carve out 90 minutes twice a week, and you use that as really quality time. For example, you're going to have really good thinking space in that short period of time. In fact, one thing that you and I were chatting about is when we do workshops, how often when we sit a group down, so let's say typical SLT down together in a room, and we all focus on the one thing that matters to everybody, quickly.
Yeah, it's amazing.
A decision, right? And actually that's also another thing, the power of a sparring partner. Find somebody to talk to about when you're a leader. It's lonely at the top. It is so true. Sometimes your team are busy with the busy work. You don't feel like you can bounce off them. So find someone that you can, whether it's your fellow SLT leaders, whether it's a trusted friend, get a coach, talk to us. We can be a sparring partner, but just
we definitely can.
So, give yourself a BAU break. No one's gonna laud you at the end of the day. This person was really fabulous, smashing through the BAU. But you got to give yourself some time to think. So I think that's number one. Number two, go looking for a decision that you can make.
Yes, and you'll find one. You'll find one.
Go and find one. And if that decision you would love to make makes you catch your breath a bit, even better.
Oh yes, it should scare you slightly.
It should scare a bit. If it makes you feel like, I'd love to, but that feels...
I'm not sure.
Go for it. Even if you just work out today, what's something you could do to move towards that decision, if it's something you really love to do. And then the third one is be honest with yourself. Are you out the loop? How much time have you spent with the customer? Do you know what the customer wants? What could bring you back into the loop if you feel out of it, or what could you keep you ahead of the curve? So just keep looking outwards. It is so tempting when you're so overwhelmed to look inwards, but keep looking at that customer. And they've got really cool things to say, customers. So go and chat to a few.
Absolutely. They'll tell you the story that you need to tell.
Yeah,
hands down. They will be brutal, but use their words, say what they're saying, think about the reverse of what they're saying. Yeah, there's so much in there. If you're lucky enough to have a customer, you've got gold.
Yeah,
you've got gold on the table. You don't have to make it up anymore. You can just listen to what they said. Fantastic. So those are 3 things that basically anyone can do. So those are very much within your control to help you figure out what may or may not be stopping your business grow. And certainly those are 3 things that I would say are extraordinarily powerful and within your gift. So yeah, thanks for being here on our first little session. It's gone on to YouTube. Thank you for being here. I'm Jessie.
I'm Nat.
If you want clarity, head over to our page that is linked below. Real strategy is simple. It shows you what to do next. That's what do this next is all about. But it's hard to do on your own. We recognise that. If you don't have a sparring partner, if you don't have someone to talk to, you're just too busy. Most leaders we know already know what they need to do. You know what you need to do, but you don't have space to share your thoughts out loud and make sense of your thinking. So that's what we're here for. There's no jargon, there's no complicated frameworks. It's an honest, uninterrupted 2-hour conversation outside of your work environment that turns your thinking into strategic direction. We're here to help. Thanks for listening. See you next time.
Bye.